Hi, this is Chuck Oliver. Welcome to this week's Hidden Wealth Solution Review. Well, I've got some good news to share with you with what's been a rather somber week for many of us that were really rooting, obviously, to have President Trump spend a second term with all the economic growth and all the great things that have been put into place. We're very prayerful that things will remain in check. However, we can't bank on big government, and clearly Biden is about big government. So in his administration more particular. So here's some things to think about. You've got Biden who came out and is now proposing a 1.9 trillion additional stimulus, which would be the second highest amount borrowed in the history of our politics, next to the 2.2 trillion that was put into place last March. But he's not going to stop there. Janet Yellen, who he's appointed to be his Treasury Secretary, has come out and shared that we've really got to push major stimulus, paraphrasing clearly. But the reality is, we've got to do this. And look, we're all for getting people back to work. We're getting, obviously, back key on getting businesses back and operable. And those are going to be important things. But they're talking about maybe another 1.1 trillion to 2.1 trillion to get it somewhere between 3 and 4 trillion just for 2021. And keep in mind, folks, we typically run about $1 trillion a year of deficit spending, not like the roughly 3 trillion that went on 4 trillion last year and what looks to be another 3 to 4 trillion this year. Somebody's going to have to pay for it. But if there's anything positive to what seems to be not much common sense, right? You got Biden who's saying we've got to get businesses back on track, but then he's proposing a national, minimum wage of $15 when companies can barely afford to stay in business for a lot of them, and now to be forced to pay employees wages monies that they don't have for those wages, on top of raising the corporate tax rate. I mean, do you see this kind of teeter-totter? Hey, look, let's extend a lot of stimulus, provided we're not padding it right to all of our political friends, and get the economy back on track because businesses are suffering, while we raise the corporate tax rate and make businesses pay $15 an hour minimum wage. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Here's the good news. Janet Yellen came out earlier this week, I should say, and said, let's not raise taxes this first year. Let's focus on getting the stimulus out and getting things back on track and reassess. Well, folks, if that's the case, then we may have just gotten a one-year reprieve to start untaxing money that we may never be able to get out under these tax more favorable, not as favorable as they were under Trump, likely, but maybe for this next year. And I'll teach you this coming Tuesday. Go to retirementprotected.com. That's retirementprotected.com and register. It's an educational log on and learn webinar where I'll teach you how to insulate your income from the IRS, who's going to be coming, for higher wages, higher income earners, with higher wages, as well as those that have worked hard and saved hard the most. So I'm really talking to those of you that have saved at least $500,000 or more, predominantly tax deferred, as well as those that have a net worth excluding their primary home's equity of $1 million or more. You're the target. And I can assure you that. And those of you that meet that criteria, you have shared with me on a repeated basis that no one's giving you direction on how to save tax. Let me give you some of that direction starting this Tuesday, and then individually for those that want to learn more from that experience. Folks, let's get to work. You've worked hard for your money. I want you to understand they're proposing, under Biden and Obama, in that disaster, you had between the highest corporate tax rate, which is taxed on two levels, right? Corporations are taxed on the corporate tax level, and then a capital gain or dividend level that gets passed on then obviously to the executives. There's a dual taxation. Well, under Obama, which is why a lot of companies fled and started doing business in other countries that weren't so tax heavy, the United States was one of, if not the highest overall tax countries in the world. Well, here's the bad news. With Obama wanting to raise the corporate tax rate back up, as well as raise the capital gain tax rate on certain incomes, it will have most of these executives and for these companies now actually more than a third higher overall tax, call it a combined tax, of, if you can believe it or not, closer to 60% under a Biden administration than what it was a little bit around 43% under an Obama administration. Folks, that's going to trickle down to those of you and I that obviously invest in a lot of these companies that are obviously producing returns for us to have the retirement accounts growth to stay ahead of inflation and to use to supplement our income and take care of our families and our grandkids and spoil our grandkids and travel and obviously support our retirement incomes. And folks, that's going to have a negative impact. When companies have higher taxes and less resources to hire with, and fewer people working, and not as profitable returns to provide, then everybody suffers. Take the opportunity to learn what you can do to insulate your income from the IRS, eliminate Uncle Sam from your kids' inheritance, and protect yourself from the downside with less risk down, if not eliminated, in the most or improved upside, but only upside for those that want to have only upside and no down. RetirementProtected.com, retirementprotected.com.